Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another Research Thursday session brought to you by Miami-Dade College Learning Resources. My name is Jenny Saxton. I'm one of the librarians at Kendall campus. And my turn to present one of these sessions has rolled around again. So I'm here to talk to you today about the hidden treasures of the library databases. I'm very glad you could join me today, and I thank you for being here. I have a lot to share with you today. So let's see if we can jump right in. All right. And everybody can see my screen, yes? You can see it? Yes? I think so. All right. All right, so for those of you who may not be familiar with our library databases, they are a suite of research tools that the Learning Resources Department here at Miami-Dade makes available to our students, faculty, and staff. We have over 100 different ones, and their main purpose is to meet the typical research needs of the typical undergraduate college student. So if you're taking a class and your professor tells you that you have to write a research paper or make a presentation or work on some kind of a project, and you have to find reliable sources of information on whatever topic you're researching, and you have to cite those sources, the databases are especially good at providing you with the kinds of sources your teachers like to see you use for these assignments. So for the most part, they're all about your schoolwork. So they're pretty serious and scholarly, and they contain things like academic journal articles and newspaper articles, ebooks, video documentaries, and that kind of thing. But if all that sounds just dull, I'm here to tell you that some of the databases also contain materials that can be used just for your personal enjoyment and can be just as entertaining as they are educational. So that's what I want to focus on today, some of the more fun stuff in our databases and some of the things that might be useful to you just in your daily lives, not necessarily related to your schoolwork. And some of these database features are kind of hidden. If you don't know they're there, you'll probably never find them. And others are hidden in plain sight. They might be right up front, but maybe you didn't notice them because you're too busy working on your research assignments. So I'm going to take you on kind of a whirlwind tour of as many of these features as I can get to in the next less than an hour. So I'm going to talk really fast, but if I can't get to everything I want to show you, or if you miss anything, don't worry, because of course there's an accompanying website that has all of the treasures I'm going to mention today and more. So let me just pop the URL for that in the chat. So you'll have this for future reference. But we cannot embark on our database adventure until we know who's on board. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to sign in either by scanning the QR code that you see on the bottom right corner of the screen, or let me see if I can put the link to that in the chat. That would be great. Okay, so while you're doing that, okay. So while you're doing that, I'll just mention a couple of things about the databases in general, and then we'll start looking at some of them. So first of all, okay, most of the databases require a login, but that's no problem for you because the login is simply your Miami-Dade username and password, which you use for everything else, so you're used to that. I also want to mention that some of the databases allow you to create your own individual account for yourself within the database. You don't have to do that, once you're in, you're in. But if a database does give you the opportunity to create your own account, you can unlock additional features like the ability to save things in folders or annotate things or set up alerts. It just depends on what the database offers. So be on the lookout for that if you decide to explore some of these databases on your own. Also, if you're a faculty member, I think we have a few of you in the room with us today, be aware that a lot of the databases provide some very nice resources for teachers. And I'll point out a couple of them as we go along, but there's lots more. And finally, I want to make sure everybody understands that all of the treasures I'm going to tell you about today are totally free for you because they've already been paid for. That's kind of the whole point. And then the last thing I want to tell you before we begin, as I mentioned, I'm going to try to get to as many of these as I can. So as we go along, you'll see this little counter up in the top right corner of the screen. So each time I mention a different database, I'm going to count them off so you can keep track of where we are. My goal is to get to 18 of them today. So I'm just going to keep talking. I'm not going to stop. So if you have any questions or comments or recommendations along the way, please do feel free to put them in the chat, because we do have some other librarians here in the room with us, and they have agreed, a couple of them have agreed to keep an eye on the chat and answer your questions, and any others can certainly jump in. So I thank them all for doing that, Aaliyah and Liseth and everybody else who's here. Oh, hey, Christina. And I hope that we can get a nice conversation going in the chat as we go along. All right? All right, so off we go. Okay. So the first thing you have to do on any trip is to get there. So to get to the databases, the easiest way, I think, is to begin at the homepage of the college, mdc.edu, and then hover over academics and then select libraries. Either libraries or learning resources will get you there. And then that will take you to our learning resources homepage. And from here, you can click either databases or in the middle of the screen, or you can click this tab that says research tools and services, because there you will find shortcuts to some of our most popular databases, and you'll also find all the contact information for all of the librarians. So if you decide to explore some of these databases on your own later on and you need help with that, or have questions, there are librarians available to assist you. So you can find out about all the different ways to get in touch with us on the research tools and services page. But I'm going to go straight to databases, and that will take us to our A to Z database portal, where you can see an alphabetical list of all of our 117 databases that we have at the moment. And I'm not going to go through how to navigate this page. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but anything you need help with, you can ask a librarian later on to help you. But one thing I do want to point out on this page is that right now, I think still, we are in the midst of a trial period for the MLA handbook database. I think it's still there. So if coincidentally you happen to be working on an MLA style research paper or project right now, you have access to this database. Don't fall in love with it though. Don't get too used to it because it may not be here for long. There's no guarantee that we're actually going to subscribe to this database, but do feel free to take advantage of it during the trial period. It's kind of the online version of the MLA handbook, and I think we're going to have access to it for what, another week or so, a couple of weeks. I'm not sure, but feel free to try it while it's there. Okay. All right, so the first database I'm going to mention is JSTOR. And if you're familiar with JSTOR, I hear you saying, Jenny, JSTOR, really? This is like the most boring database in the world. And that's because JSTOR functions mainly as an archival collection of scholarly journal articles in the humanities, sciences, and social sciences. So it can be very useful, but for the most part, it's kind of a snooze. However, JSTOR does have quite a few surprisingly interesting features. I'm only going to tell you about a couple of them. The first one I'm going to mention is called ARTSTOR, and some of you might know ARTSTOR as a separate database unto itself. But my understanding is that that's going to be going away because ARTSTOR and JSTOR have merged. It's the same company. So from now on, to get to ARTSTOR, you got to go through JSTOR. So we might as well get used to that now. So once you're in JSTOR, you need to scroll down and find this link that says Search ARTSTOR's Collections. But before I go into that, I do want to point out another interesting feature of JSTOR that I only just discovered the other day when I was preparing for this session, and it's right here. And it's called Independent Voices. And it's an archival collection of underground newspapers and other kinds of publications from both the radical left and the radical right. I haven't had a chance to really look at it yet, but I imagine it's not for the squeamish. So I'm not going to take us there today, but I wanted to point it out because it's something you might find thought-provoking later on. But I do want to take you into ARTSTOR. So ARTSTOR is a collection of over 2 million high-resolution art images from museums and galleries all over the world. And again, I hear you saying, but Jenny, I can just go to Google Images and find a picture of Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. And that's true, you absolutely can. But ARTSTOR offers some tools that can help you to view these images. And I have a little video clip here. It doesn't have any sound. Let me see if I can start it. But you can see, let's see if did it start? Not yet. Okay, here you go. You can see that because these are high resolution images, you can zoom in pretty far, and then you can click and drag them to, examine them up close. And also, as you'll see in a second, you can compare images up to 4 at a time, I think, side by side, and then zoom into both of them. And, you can see the brush strokes and the canvas and everything. And not just paintings in this database, but sculptures and um, decorative arts and photography and other kinds of artwork as well. Oops, I want to see that again. Okay. And the hidden treasure that I want to point out in this database is a collection of over 2,360-degree panoramic images of architecture and archaeological sites. But to get to them, you have to type in this search string. It's a little bizarre, but this is what the ARTSTOR people told me you have to do now. You have to type in CTY : contributed _ panoramas, and then you'll retrieve them all. And I have another little video clip to show you what one of them looks like. Let's see. Okay. This is the inside of a cave in China. And these sculptures and wall paintings are from the 10th century. And you click and drag your way around. You can go faster or slower than this. But you can see, it's like being in the room. And there are some panoramas where you can tilt the camera up and look at the ceiling of a cathedral or whatever. Oops, I went too far. I think there's one like of the Eiffel Tower where you're standing underneath it and you can look up through the tower. So these are kind of cool. But it is kind of an oddball collection, though. So if you go in looking for a specific building that you have in mind, you'll probably be disappointed. It's more fun to just go in here and browse the collection. And you can browse by time period, you can browse by geographic location, and a couple of other criteria. Now, if you're a faculty member, don't think you have to be teaching art to make use of these images in the classroom. ARTSTOR has a lot of very nice resources for teachers that can give you ideas for using these images across the curriculum, including STEM and other areas where you wouldn't necessarily think about using art to help teach these subjects. And they also offer live webinars occasionally that are open to everyone that can really help you to get the most out of this database as a teaching tool. All right. So I want to go back to just regular JSTOR now and tell you about a couple of other features. JSTOR, as I mentioned, is a scholarly database, but they do have a magazine called JSTOR Daily that has articles that are specifically designed to be engaging for undergraduate college students. So they're written at that level, and they're fairly short. And within JSTOR Daily, I want to point out a couple of interesting sections. One is called Quirky History, and the other is called the Cabinet of Curiosities. So this is like news of the weird. And JSTOR Daily is openly available on the web. You don't necessarily have to get to it through the JSTOR database, but there is an incentive for logging into JSTOR first and then going to JSTOR Daily from there. And that's because most of the articles in JSTOR Daily, I'll show you, come with links to related scholarly articles in JSTOR. So if you have a research paper assignment and you're allowed to choose whatever topic you want, this could be a good way to approach this. Find an article in JSTOR Daily that's interesting to you, and then you'll have links to scholarly articles about it. And if you go to JSTOR Daily through JSTOR, you'll already be logged in. So you can go right into these references. Okay. Another nice feature of JSTOR is something called the JSTOR Understanding Series, which is a small collection of literary classics and a handful of historical documents like the U.S. Constitution and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. The King James Bible is in here, the complete works of Shakespeare, I believe also. And the gimmick to this is that when you open one of these up and you start reading through the full text, like here you can see the I Have a Dream speech, You notice next to each paragraph, there's a number, like the number 5 here. What that means is that somewhere in the JSTOR collection of scholarly articles, there are 5 articles that reference this paragraph in the speech. So if you click the number, a pop-up window opens with links to those 5 articles. So you can read the text and do research on it at the same time, which is kind of handy. Okay. The next database I want to show you is called Medici TV, which is a collection of full-length videos of operas, ballets, classical music concerts, jazz performances, and also documentaries about these works. So if you want to get a little culture on, this is a beautiful database. And there are 2 treasures in here that I want to mention. The first is the collection of master classes. And when they say master, they're not joking around. These are the big names, you know, like people like Yo-Yo Ma and Michael Tilson Thomas. And you can watch them imparting all kinds of wisdom to younger talents. And if you're a teacher, even if you don't teach music, it's interesting to see how they do it and, you know, to watch their teaching techniques. And then another treasure in this database is this link up here that says coming soon. This is a calendar of upcoming live streamed events. So you can use this database to watch live performances in real time. And the best part about this is that next to each listing here, there's a button you can click, and then it lets you add the event to your calendar, or you can just put in your email address and it'll send you an email an hour before the performance. So you'll remember to log in. But if you miss it, you know, you can watch the recording later. And I tried it and it did email me an hour before the performance. So it works. Okay, but if you prefer a play, we have another database for you. This one is called Digital Theater Plus. This is a collection of full-length videos of theatrical performances, everything from ancient Greek plays to Shakespeare to musical comedy and everything in between. And the plus is, in Digital Theater Plus, is an extensive collection of documentaries where actors, directors, costume designers, lighting designers, and everybody else involved in the theater talk about their craft. And again, if you're a teacher, this database offers a lot of accompanying material. For some of the really famous plays, like A Doll's House, for example, there are entire toolkits that include lesson plans, assessments, study guides, the whole shebang is in there. And the hidden treasure in this database is something a little unexpected. If you go to the search bar and type in the words graphic novel, singular, not plural, you will find a small but very nice collection of literary classics in graphic novel form, including a series called Manga Shakespeare. Here you can see a screenshot of Manga Hamlet. And they're really good. Of course, they're abridged, but as you can see, it's pretty faithful to the original text. So if you read Manga Hamlet and you like it, you can then use this database to watch real Hamlet. I think there are 3 or 4 different productions of Hamlet in here, including one by the Royal Shakespeare Company. So, you know, it doesn't get any better than that. Okay, next up is a database called OVERDRIVE, which is a collection of full-text ebooks and e-audiobooks. And the focus of this database is leisure reading. So if you're somebody who likes to read or somebody who likes to listen to an audiobook while you're driving or on the treadmill or whatever, this database includes bestsellers and other popular titles, fiction and nonfiction both. And to get the full experience from OVERDRIVE, they really want you to download an app called Libby. And a lot of people ask what's the difference between OVERDRIVE and Libby. OVERDRIVE, if I'm explaining this correctly, and Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, but OVERDRIVE is the platform where all of these books and audiobooks live, and Libby is the app that you use to read or listen to the books and manage your account. But you borrow these books the same way that you borrow any library book. You just click borrow, and then you can read it. And I believe you can have up to 5 items checked out at a time. And if you're somebody who feels a little squirrely about reading an entire book on your phone, I'm here to tell you that it's really not that bad. I've done it. It's really not bad. But you can certainly read these books on a laptop or a desktop if you prefer. And I think Christina put the link to Libby in there, so that's good. Thank you. And the treasure I want to point out in OVERDRIVE is, again, graphic novels. This database has a nice collection of graphic novels and manga. Now, granted, trying to read a graphic novel on your phone might be a little tedious, but Libby will sync to all your devices. So if you start reading a graphic novel on your phone and then decide you'd rather read it on an iPad or a laptop, it'll remember your place in the book. So that's a good thing. So to find the graphic novels in OVERDRIVE, you just open the little hamburger menu, and then you'll see over 100 different genres to choose from. And one of them is comics and graphic books. And the number next to each category here refers to the number of titles in that genre. So currently we have 184 graphic books in our OVERDRIVE collection. And as you can see, there's a Batman title here. So there is some DC and Marvel. There are graphic memoirs and a nice selection of manga as well. And there's one other nice feature of OVERDRIVE, but I'm going to mention it in a little bit. So hold this up. Okay, now we do have other ebook databases as well, but they're not about reading for fun. They're more about school-related topics. So the kind of books you'd use for your research assignments and other homework. And one of these databases is called EBSCO eBooks. But there's one kind of fun thing in here that you might not have noticed, and it's right here where it says cooking. There's a whole collection of cookbooks in here. So if you like to cook or bake, you might be interested in this. And since we're talking about graphic novels and manga, I have to show you this one cookbook I came across the other day while I was putting the slideshow together. It's the Anime Chef Cookbook, 75 iconic dishes from your favorite anime. So I thought this one was kind of fun. But there are over 200 other cookbooks in here, different ethnic cookbooks and stuff. So OVERDRIVE has some cookbooks as well. So there's this and OVERDRIVE. Okay, speaking of books, we have a database called Books and Authors, which used to have a different name. And I don't know why they changed the name of this database, because the previous name was so much more descriptive, I think, and more fun. It used to be called What Do I Read Next? And that's exactly what this database is about. It's a database that will recommend books for you to read based on what you like. And, of course, Amazon will do that for you too. And there are other websites that will do that. But this database really lets you drill down into a variety of different genres and subgenres, so you can get really specific about what you're looking for. And it lets you mix and match different criteria, like the location where the story takes place, or the time period, or the type of characters. So let's say, for example, you're in the mood to read a book about royalty in 16th century France. So you select those criteria to see if you get any matches. Now, you're not always going to get matches. If you're looking for a book about a hockey player in ancient Egypt, that's probably not going to work. But here you can see I've retrieved 26 books that match all of my criteria. Or if you don't want to do it this way, you can browse through different categories, and there are so many to choose from. The categories that you see listed on the left side of the screen here are actually subcategories just for fantasy fiction alone. So if you want to read a book, a fantasy fiction book about a child in peril, or ancient evil unleashed, you can specify that. So if you're in a book club, this could be a fun way of choosing your next selection, right? Now, it's important to note that these are not ebooks. This is not an ebook database where you can read the books right from here. These are just lists. They're just recommendations. So if you're interested in one of these books and you don't want to buy it, you have to figure out whether a library to which you have access, like your campus library or maybe the public library, has a copy of the book. Or you can go back to our old friend, OVERDRIVE, to see if the book is available as an ebook or audiobook in our OVERDRIVE collection. So let's say I'm interested in this book, Lore, by Alexandra Bracken. I can go back to OVERDRIVE and search for it. And here you can see that indeed we do have it available to borrow. And in this case, we have both the ebook and the audiobook, so you have a choice. We don't always have everything in both formats, but in this case we do. But let's say I want this book, Amari and the Knight Brothers. So I go to search for it in OVERDRIVE, but this time you notice it doesn't say borrow, it says notify me. This means that we don't have this book in our OVERDRIVE collection currently, but if you click notify me, it will alert us, the librarians, to the fact that there's someone who's interested in this book. And then funds permitting, and if we decide the book is appropriate for our collection, we'll add it. And then you'll receive notification that the book is available for you to borrow. So that's another nice feature of OVERDRIVE. But if you don't have the time or the patience to read an entire book, and you can read a magazine instead. We have a database called FLIPSTER, which contains digitized popular magazines like Time and Vogue and National Geographic and Rolling Stone, and Wired is in here, Sports Illustrated. I think there's something like 85 different magazines in here. And you can see the latest issues and some back issues as well. And when you open one of these up, it's just like having the paper copy of the magazine in front of you. You flip the pages, which is why it's called FLIPSTER. And you can search each individual magazine by keyword. So that's a nice database too. And every once in a while, somebody asks me if FLIPSTER contains Consumer Reports, which is a very popular title. If you're not familiar with Consumer Reports, it's a magazine that helps you if there's something you need to buy, especially if it's a big ticket item like a car, or if maybe you need tires for your car, or maybe you need like a refrigerator or a lawnmower or a TV, or maybe you're having a baby and you need to buy a stroller or a car seat or something. Consumer Reports rates different products and compares different brands. So it helps you to decide what to buy. And they don't take advertising, so they can be very impartial about their ratings. So the answer to whether or not FLIPSTER has this is yes and no. FLIPSTER does have the annual Consumer Reports buying guide. But if you want up-to-the-minute Consumer Reports, you can go to their website, consumerreports.org, to try to see their famous ratings and reviews of various products. But if you notice up here where it says, ready to get started, join now, that means that they're not going to show you the ratings and reviews unless you pay for a subscription. But don't do that, because guess what? You do have a paid subscription through the Miami-Dade College Libraries. And all you have to do is find the magic link to Consumer Reports. And to do that, you go back to our A to Z database portal that I showed you in the beginning, find the databases that start with C, and then there it is right there, the magic link to Consumer Reports. And if you click that link, it will take you back to the Consumer Reports website. But remember before where it said ready to get started, join now? Well, if you go in through the magic link in our database list, now it's going to say, welcome back, library user, and you're in. I had to use this just last week. I had to buy a washer and dryer, which, is something you don't do every day. And boy, did this come in handy. Okay, similarly, there's another publication whose website you have access to through our databases, and it's the journal Science, which is a peer-reviewed journal on general science topics. So again, instead of going to their website, which I think is at science.org, and hitting a big fat paywall, go back to our A to Z database portal, find the databases that start with S, click the magic link to Science, and poof, you'll have access to their website. Okay. All right, I hope everybody's still with me, because it's time now to get into our time machine, or TARDIS, if you prefer, and travel back in time to a database called New York Times Historical. So the New York Times, as I hope you know, is of course a newspaper, and the New York Times Historical Database is the New York Times going all the way back to the year 1851, which I think is the year the New York Times first started, actually. So you can use this database to experience important historical events, or relive them if you're old enough to remember these things. This one, of course, is from July of 1969, the moon landing, certainly one of the most important events of the 20th century. Here's one that's a little older, and I covered up the front page because I want to see if you can guess what this is. This is the paper from April 16th, April 16th, 1912. What happened the day before? What happened on April 15th, 1912? Does anybody know?
Titanic? No.
Yes, that you are correct. This April 15th was the day the Titanic hit the iceberg and sank. So this is the actual real-time reporting of this event. And as you can see, the story is still unfolding at this point. They don't know yet which passenger survived and which ones didn't make it. And you can see in the headline, they're a little worried about Mrs. Astor, but she did indeed survive, although I believe her husband was killed. The Astors were a very prominent, wealthy family in those days. So this is very dramatic reporting. I'm looking to the right of the picture where it says, biggest liner plunges to the bottom at 2:20 a.m. Rescuers there too late. Women and children first. And then on the left side, it says, women and children put over in lifeboats. Vincent Astor calls at White Star Line, or White Star office for news of his father, leaves weeping. And then I love this part that says, manager of the line insisted Titanic was unsinkable even after she had gone down. So yeah, I guess that goes to show that denial of in-your-face facts is nothing new. Okay, here's an issue of the paper that's even older. This one is from November 20th, 1863. What was happening in the United States in 1863? As I grab a Kleenex here. 1863, what was going on?
Gettysburg Address?
Yes. Yes, you're really good. I was thinking somebody would say Civil War, but yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. November 20th, 1863 was the day after President Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. And there's a story here in this issue of the paper called The Heroes of July. And I will, yes, 3 cents. You know what's interesting about that? That's 3 cents for the paper. The later one from the Titanic, which was many years later, was only 1 cent. And this was 3 cents, even though it's before. Maybe because of the war and maybe paper was scarce. No, I don't know. But anyway, I'll enlarge the story for you so you can see it. So again, this is the original news reporting of the Gettysburg Address, and you notice the text of the speech is reproduced here, 7 years ago. We're all very familiar with that. But if you look closely, you'll see sprinkled throughout the text is the word applause, because the person who wrote this article was presumably an eyewitness. That person was there when President Lincoln gave that very famous speech. So they can tell you at which points during the speech people applauded. So suddenly this dusty historical document, this speech that we all grew up knowing about, becomes a living thing. And, I don't know if you're into history or anything, or if you find this as moving as I do, but this kind of gave me the chills the first time I saw it. But on a lighter note, I want to tell you about an English professor we used to have here at Kendall campus who used to give his students a very interesting assignment called contextualizing your birthday. And the assignment was to find out what was happening in the world on the day you were born and then write about it. So one way of doing that is to read the issue of the New York Times that came out on the day you were born. So I thought this was a cool assignment, so I decided to do it. So this is the paper from the day I was born. I was born on February 14th, so yes, yesterday was my birthday. I whited out the year here because I don't want you to see how old I am, but I think the second I show you the story that I want to mention, I think you'll be able to guess. And here it is. I was born the week the Beatles came to Miami. I wasn't born in Miami. I was born up north, but I hope you're familiar with the Beatles. They were a very famous British band. And when they first started out, they were very popular, especially with teenage girls. So this article says, the British Rock and Roll Quartet flew here for a brief rest and television appearance following 2 concerts in Carnegie Hall last night. Despite the crush of the thousands of screaming and singing fans, the Beatles made it through the airport unmolested and were rushed to Miami Beach in a limousine flanked by police escorts. I can just imagine the scene. But the part of this article that always cracks me up is here at the end where it says, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy had some trouble getting into the Plaza Hotel yesterday because of the throng of girls who were waiting outside for a glimpse of the Beatles. Mr. Kennedy, blah, blah, blah. A spectator said that in the crowd's concentration on the performers, no one batted an eyelash at the Attorney General. So Bobby Kennedy, who was extremely famous in his own right, couldn't get the time of day from anybody that day because they were all too busy looking at the Beatles. So that in itself kind of, contextualizes the whole story for me. Okay. All right, so speaking of newspapers, we also have the current New York Times database, by the way, but not just the historical one, just, the current one. But we also have another database called America's News. This is a database where you can search hundreds of newspapers at once, including the Miami Herald, El Nuevo Herald, Sun Sentinel, and many other newspapers across the United States. And the hidden treasure that I want to point out in this database isn't exactly hidden. It's right on the main page, but you have to scroll down to see it. And it's the hot topics. This is a small collection of current news topics. I think they change this every month. But one of the challenges to doing research in these databases sometimes is figuring out exactly what words and combinations of words to search for to retrieve exactly the information you're looking for. So the nice thing about the hot topics is that for each topic, they give you kind of already canned the perfect search string for finding newspaper articles on that topic. And if you click on it, it will automatically perform that perfect search. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Boolean searching, using the words and, or, and not to improve your searches. As a matter of fact, the last Research Thursday session I did was all about that. So here they've done the Boolean logic for you, and they've also used quotation marks and parentheses and other tricks of the trade to create the perfect search. And the one thing I wanted to point out here is that many of the other databases, not just this one, support Boolean searching as well. So theoretically, you could copy this search string and paste it into another database or into Google to see what you get. There's no law that says you have to, you can only use this search string in this one database. So, try that and see what happens. Okay, we also have a few other databases that focus, or a few databases that focus specifically about controversial issues, like pro-con issues. So if you have to write an argumentative research paper or a persuasive essay, or participate in a debate where you have to take a side on an issue and defend your position, these databases can be very helpful. And this one is called Issues and Controversies. And the treasure I want to point out in this one is a collection of editorial cartoons, like this one. The one problem I have with these cartoons is that a lot of them are a little outdated, but some of them are still relevant. Like this one, for example, this is from 2009. But I think it's still pretty relevant today. It's about cybersecurity. But the really nice thing about these cartoons is that they come with discussion questions. I don't know how good they are, but they're there. And there's another database that focuses on controversial issues. This one is called SIRS Researcher. And there are editorial cartoons in this database too. They're a little harder to find because they're not all in one place, like in Issues and Controversies. In SIRS, you have to search for the word cartoons and then limit your results to images. And they don't come with discussion questions, but the upside is that they do provide links to related articles. And if you notice in the upper right corner here, there's a link that says Educators Resources. And if you click there, you will find, among other things, these very nice curriculum guides, one of which is all about how to analyze editorial cartoons. So this is a multi-page tutorial / worksheet that really encourages students to look closely at these cartoons. And here you can see they're asking students to consider the symbols, the exaggeration, the oversimplification, etc. And there are other curriculum guides as well. There's one here on how to analyze infographics. There's one for statistics. So potentially useful stuff. And there's also these note organizers, which may be of particular interest to writing tutors. These note organizers are interactive forms that can help you to organize a paper. And you can type in these boxes and you can paste links to articles in here. So if you found an article that could be a good source for your supporting evidence or rebuttal, you can paste it in here in the appropriate place and it can help you to organize your paper. So that's nice. Okay, moving right along, I'm going to check the time here. This is a database called Music Online Listening, which is an archival collection of sound recordings, classical music, folk music, world music. So the music of different ethnicities and cultures from all over the world, jazz, vintage American popular music, just tons of stuff in here. Now, I have to tell you that this is kind of a weird database. The interface sometimes doesn't work the way you think it's supposed to work, and there are spelling mistakes all over this database, but I'm pointing it out because the content is stupendous. Now, don't go in here expecting to find, Bad Bunny or Taylor Swift or, Billie Eilish or, people like that. That kind of stuff's not going to be in here. But you will find people such as this fellow, Cab Calloway. I don't know or if any of you are old enough to know or remember him. He was a very famous orchestra leader during the big band era in the 1930s and 40s. And the last time I gave this presentation, it was a while back, to my utter shock and surprise, a student, a young person who was attending the session, actually knew the correct answer when I asked if anybody knew the name of the song that Cab Calloway is most famous for. So I'm going to ask this group too. Can anybody name the song, Cab Calloway's signature song? Does anyone know? No. Okay, I'm gonna play just a few seconds of it. I'm not gonna play the whole thing. I'm just gonna play a little bit so you know what we're talking about. I hope you'll be able to hear it. Okay, so wasn't he good? Ariane, is your first time hearing the song? Have you ever seen the movie The Blues Brothers? He does this. He does this. And
No, I never saw.
Brothers. He
I've
was
never seen the
older.
movie.
Yeah, he was older by that time. It's a great song. Blues in the Night is also a great song too. Um, okay, so I want to also let you know that there are other things in this database besides music. There are spoken word recordings in here as well. Like this is someone reciting 20th century French poetry. So again, if you're a teacher, don't think you have to teach music to make use of this database. Obviously, if you teach world languages or anthropology or something like that, you might find this something like this interesting to include in a lesson. Here's an example of something that might be useful if you're teaching maybe a social sciences course and you're doing a lesson on social movements during the 20th century, like the labor movement. This is an album of classic labor songs. So you've got people like Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and Paul Robeson singing Joe Hill and that kind of thing. But again, I hear you saying, but Jenny, I can just go on YouTube and find recordings like this, right? And again, that's true, but the database gives you different ways of searching and browsing and discovering this kind of music. And sometimes if you're lucky, like in this example, they also give you the liner notes. So this is a PDF file of the documentation that originally came with the album. And in this case, there's a little description of each song and there are pictures and the lyrics and everything. You don't always get this with every recording, but in this case you do. Now, the hidden treasure I want to point out in this database is up here in the hamburger up at the top. If you ever see one of these collapsible menus in a database, open it and see what's there. And then you get a drop-down menu that says My Collections. And that will bring up a list of all of the collections that are included in this database. And it's not all music. Some of these are archival collections of primary source documents like Black Thought and Culture, Civil War letters and diaries, North American immigrant letters and diaries and oral histories, North American women's letters and diaries. So since it's Black History Month, the other day I went into Black Thought and Culture because a minute ago I mentioned Paul Robeson. I don't know if any of you know who he was. He was a singer. He had a beautiful, very deep bass, like baritone bass voice. But he was also an activist and kind of a controversial figure. So I wanted to see if there was anything about him in this collection. And sure enough, I found a few things, including this document called Paul Robeson, Right or Wrong. And it's kind of a scholarly database on Paul Robeson's views. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because this database allows you to create playlists of music the same way you can do on YouTube. But in the database, you can also add documents like this to a playlist. So if you are doing a lesson on Black history or the labor movement, you could include the recording of Paul Robeson singing Joe Hill, and you could also include a document like this. And you can also insert into a playlist external sources, like a YouTube video. So you can curate a variety of materials and then share one link with your students. And of course, since I'm talking about Paul Robeson and since it is Black History Month, I feel compelled to play a little bit of him for you. Just a few seconds. So this is a recording from the 1930s, so it's a little scratchy, but here goes.
Swing low.
Isn't that pretty? I love his mom. My mother loved him. Okay. All right, so now it's time for everybody's favorite database, which is Canopy. Canopy with a K. Canopy is a very eclectic collection of full-length videos, many of which are documentaries, but there's also a lot of feature films in here, and they tend to be like art house kind of films. And I want to call your attention to the bottom row of this screenshot here, because these are some of the titles in the Criterion collection. This is a collection that includes some of the most important films ever made. So, you have films by Ingmar Bergman and Federico Fellini and Akira Kurosawa, and way more than just what you see here. So this is like Film Studies 101. There are also cult films in here like Eraserhead and Nosferatu and Fantastic Planet. There's film noir, classic silent films like Metropolis. There's also quite a bit of LGBTQ content in here. And one thing that you can do in Canopy that a lot of people don't know about is you can type in the name of a well-known film festival like Cannes. And it will bring up some of the films that have been shown at the Cannes Film Festival. Not every single one of them. And some of them are old, but these are great films. Black Orpheus, you see that one in the lower left corner? I love that one. And you can type in the names of a few other big festivals too, like Sundance, SXSW, South by Southwest, Tribeca, Toronto, I think also works. So the only problem with this database is there's so much cool stuff in here that you'll go down these rabbit holes, and before you know it, it's 2 a.m. and you haven't done your homework. So don't say I didn't warn you about that. One brand new feature of Canopy, which I only found out a couple of days ago, is the Canopy Cinema series. Every month, they're going to be highlighting a different film and hosting a live Q&A session with the filmmakers that you can attend online. I think you have to register in advance, but it's free. The March selection ties in with Women's History Month. The April selection ties in with Earth Day. And the May selection is about, apparently it's about the Ivy League admissions controversy. So interesting stuff. You can visit the website, lib.canopy.com/cinema series. That's Canopy with a K. And check it out. Okay, we have a long weekend coming up. So if you've binged everything there is to binge on Netflix and whatever other streaming services you have, know that you have access to a database called Swank. This is a collection of popular Hollywood films. It's a small collection. I think there's only 100 or so movies in here, maybe a few more. And some of them are a little bit old, but I always like to say old but gold. And there are some great movies in here. So pop yourself some popcorn and plunk yourself down on the couch and enjoy. And something about Canopy, I don't think I mentioned it. But in Canopy, I don't think Swank, but with Canopy, if you have a Roku or some kind of device like that, you can cast these things to that big screen TV that you just bought to watch the Super Bowl. Okay, just a couple of more databases to mention very quickly. This one is called Testing and Education Reference Center, also known as Peterson's Test Prep. So if you have to take a standardized test like the CLEP, or CLEP Spanish or the SAT or GRE, or if you have to take the TOEFL test or the US citizenship test, or a vocational exam like the NCLEX for nursing or the ASVAB for the military, this database offers practice tests and study guides for these exams. Now, you do have to set up an account for yourself inside this database, but it's free. And once you have an account, you can prep for an exam. You can search for scholarships. You can search for jobs. They have a resume building tool in here and some other career tools. And then notice on the bottom left where it says brush up on foundational skills. That section contains some video tutorials on basic math, English, and also Microsoft Office. So if you need to learn how to use Word or Excel. And certainly, you can find YouTube videos on that, but these are professionally done, the videos in here. Okay, look, 18. We're gonna make it. I'm gonna mention one more database, and then I'm gonna tell you about a couple of bonus treasures, and then we'll be ready to wrap things up. This database is called Elementary. It's a database that is specifically designed for children to use. So if you have children at home, or if you have younger brothers and sisters and they have some kind of homework assignment they're working on, or if they just want to learn something new, you can log in for them and give them access to this kid-friendly database. Or maybe you're taking a course in elementary education and you need to see some resources for kids. Here you go. Okay, I saved everybody's favorite treasure for last. It's not that exciting, but students love it. And it's the fact that most of our databases, not all, but most provide you with already formatted MLA and APA citations for the sources you find. And some of them include other styles as well, like Chicago and some other styles. And I'll prove it. Look, cite, 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 cite. Even Canopy has a citation tool. I will caution you, though, that some databases do a better job than others at formatting these references. Like the one you see at the bottom here for this film, Black Orpheus. It looks pretty good, but I think it could use a couple of tweaks. Like, at the very least, you have to do the hanging indent and the double spacing and everything. So you'll still probably want to consult the Purdue OWL website, or maybe the MLA Handbook Trial database that I was telling you about earlier, if you hurry. And the last treasure I want to mention is your public library, which also has databases. The Miami-Dade Public Library, mdpls.org, has some awesome databases. They have one called Hoopla that you might be familiar with, or that you might enjoy. That's, music and movies and ebooks and stuff. They have some of the same databases we have, but they have different ones too. So check out their website. You might be surprised at what they have to offer. And Hialeah has their own public library, right? I think, but they have databases too. So if you're graduating and you won't have access to the Miami-Dade, you won't have a Miami-Dade login anymore, Miami-Dade College login anymore, or maybe you're retiring or something, you still have access to databases through your public library. And certainly if you go on to a college or university, they'll have databases too, I promise you. All right, so that is my show. Does anybody have any questions or comments or recommendations, or favorite databases of their own or features of their own that they know about and use? The floor is open, and thank you all so much for being here. I can't believe I did all of that in an hour. I hope you're still with me. And thank you to the librarians and friends who helped out in the chat. And thanks for the birthday wishes too. And know that, there are more Research Thursday sessions coming up. There's a little QR code there that you can use to find out about those. And the Research Thursday folks have also asked us to put a link in here to a survey that that you can fill out about today's session. Any last minute questions, comments, or anything? All right, applause, applause. Thank you so much.